Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for your patience. As you can imagine, Congress is hard at work these days. We are so glad you're joining us for today's conversation. This is an important moment in our nation, a time when policy and so many other things are changing rapidly, and it's all having an enormous impact on the lives of young people and their families and communities. And this is a time when the involvement of young people is more critical than ever. This is part of our ongoing speaker series at the National Center for Youth Law, and we focus on amplifying the voices of young people and creating a path to a better future for children, youth, families, and communities. Today, we are joined by Congressman Maxwell Frost, who is a powerful example of what it means to act with conscience and to drive change. Congressman Frost is the first Gen Z member of Congress. His perspective, his leadership, and activism is powerful. As we engage with him today, we hope his insights leave you feeling inspired and ready to make your own impact on the world. And before we get started, just a quick note, Congressman Frost and I will have a conversation, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So please feel free to share questions in the chat as we go, and we'll get to as many as we're able. So now it is my pleasure to introduce Congressman Maxwell Frost. Congressman Frost, you are a force for change. You are an amazing person who can discuss how young people can shape the future. And you, as the first Gen Z member of Congress, you've already broken barriers in Washington. And your story is one of resilience, vision, and action. You've become an outspoken advocate for many of the issues that matter most to young people and to our future, from climate change to healthcare to gun violence prevention. We are excited to hear from you today about your path, your work, and what the future holds for young activists in this country. Welcome, Congressman Frost.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor to be here, and I really appreciate all the work that you guys do.
Well, thank you. It's our honor to have you here. And as we both know, the challenges that young people, that children, youth, and families face are just tremendous, and at this moment, sadly, becoming even more difficult.
Yeah.
I'll begin now with the first question. Congressman Frost, you've spoken about how your journey into politics began with activism. Would you share how that experience shaped your views on activism and politics, and how it led to your focus on uplifting young people and their experiences?
Yeah, well, I mean, I got involved in politics when I was 15 years old because I didn't want to get shot in school. It was that fear. It was the Sandy Hook shooting that happened. I went to an arts middle school and high school. Before every jazz band concert, my best friends and I would go to this, I think it was a Chili's across the street. We're there eating, and as silence falls across the restaurant, we look at the television screens and we read that somebody walked into an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut, and murdered 21 children and teachers. And it had a huge impact on me. I remember I went back to play that show that night and couldn't play correctly because I kept looking at the exit door behind my back. I was scared somebody would walk in and kill my friends, family, myself. And at the time, that feeling felt very unique. But fast forward over 10 years later, and that feeling is anything but unique. Um, then I got involved in advocacy in the movement to end gun violence. And, to be honest, being a part of a movement at the age of 15 that was so deeply connected to trauma and death, it's hard on a young person and young people. But on top of that, it's even harder to live through it. During my campaign, I had calculated that between the ages of 15 and 24, I'd been to over 60 vigils, funerals, and memorials of people who had been senselessly killed due to gun violence. And now we know that it's the leading cause of death for children and teens. And so now being in Congress, my advocacy and activism and the work that I did on the ground definitely fully informs the work I do up here. For instance, the first bill I introduced was to create the first federal office of gun violence prevention. The whole reason I did that is because it's something I had been fighting for before Congress when I was at March for Our Lives. And I knew that now as a member of Congress, a new tool I have that I didn't have before was that I could introduce legislation. And I could use that legislation to push for the administration to do it. So Chris Murphy and I introduced that bill together. We pushed the administration, the outside organizations pushed the administration, and together we won the first ever Office of Gun Violence Prevention at the White House. And that office saved lives and got hundreds of millions of dollars across the country for community violence intervention. And we actually have seen that over the past 3 years, gun violence has gone down the most it has in our country's history. 40% in Boston, 23% in Chicago, dips all across the entire country. And unfortunately, we're going to see gun violence go up again because the office was taken away on day 2 of the Trump administration. A lot of the executive orders to help keep our people safe and to help go after people selling guns in the secondary market are not going to happen as much anymore, and more people will die as a result. However, I would have never come up with that idea if it wasn't the idea of introducing the bill, if it wasn't for my advocacy before getting to Congress. And so I think we're in a moment where it's funny because during my election, so many people that were running against me would say he's just an activist, he's just an organizer, he's not ready for Congress. But we look around now, and this is the time for organizers. This is the time for activists, and it's a time for all legislators to find the organizer within them, so you can both do the work within the institution, but also question everything we do. It's not a normal time. And so we do have to think outside of the normal realm of what's acceptable and what is normal politics, because it is not business as usual right now.
And throughout our nation's history, organizing has been pivotal to change.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. And also your determination to turn fear, just well-justified fear and trauma into activism, and now Congress is it's just incredible. Thank you. So as the first Gen Z member of Congress, you've entered an institution largely comprised of older generations. What has it been like for you working within a system that, for mostly, for the most part, has not represented children, youth, or the concerns of young people?
Well, it's interesting because I've kind of grown up being someone who would really focus in on youth organizing. And I was always the youngest person in the room in a lot of the organizations I worked in, from campaigns, when I worked at the ACLU. The only time I wasn't the oldest person in the room is when I was working at March for Our Lives. And a lot of that's because I was helping to manage a national chapter network of people in high school and people in college as well. And so I'm used to working with people a lot older than me. And, truth be told, I'm not one of these people that think we need to completely get rid of everyone in Congress and just have young people. All I want is a representative government. And the fact of the matter is, Gen Z and millennials make up a third of this electorate, and we're nowhere near a third of Congress or city councils or school boards across the entire country. And it's a problem because our job is we come together. We sit at the table and we craft legislation on both the problems we know about, but I'd argue more importantly, the problems we don't even know exist yet. And having the most experiences represented at the table are so important. And the experience of young people and what it means to grow up in society right now is missing, drastically missing from Congress. And it's part of the reason we're not seeing the urgency that we need on the climate crisis. We're not seeing the urgency we need on issues that drastically impact teens and children. And as part of the reason is because we're barely represented here in terms of us ourselves. And so we need more young people running for office, not just Congress, but all positions across the entire country.
Thank you. Congressman Frost, what challenges and opportunities do you specifically face as the youngest member of Congress?
You know, it's so interesting because I've been asked this before, and I haven't experienced someone kind of disparaging me because of my youth or saying, I can't do this or that because of my youth in the institution. Now, I don't know what people say behind my back,
Mm.
but people haven't come to me with that. What I will say though is what makes it difficult is even me as a young person, the reason why I want more young people and younger people than me now here is because I myself have not experienced everything and I have a very specific life outlook. And we need more young people who can talk about what it means to grow up in a rural community, maybe, or people who have experienced different experiences than me. And a lot of those experiences are missing within Congress. And the problem is that the institution is very hard to get into. I mean, I always say that if you want to run for Congress, especially as a young working class person, it's going to take a lot of grit, a lot of grace, a lot of work ethic, and a message that resonates, and then a little bit of luck. And the reason I always say a little bit of luck is because it is hard. Most people run for office don't make it here. And a big part of it is because of the big money that we see in our politics. And the big money that oftentimes will keep working class young people away from the institution. And so that alone makes it so that way, a lot of times the battles that you wage here can feel like lonely battles, even if you have a group of legislators that are with you on it. But the thing I always keep in mind is when I go home, I feel anything but lonely on a lot of these issues because my constituents and the people I represent are with me on these things. So I think all in all, one of the biggest things we need to focus on is reforming our elections and making it, it shouldn't be easy to run for office, but it shouldn't be damn near impossible. And we're at the point now that for working people, it's almost damn near impossible. My story shouldn't be unique. I mean, it shouldn't be national news that like a young person gets into Congress or a working class young person gets into Congress. But the reason it is because it doesn't happen. And so that's part of, my mission. Like one of the first things I did when I got to Congress is I worked with the FEC and gave my testimony to say, we need to expand the ability for candidates to be able to get a stipend from their campaign. Well, a lot of people listen to that and be like, wait, no, I'm not for that. But you got to think about it. There's a reason why most of the people who run for office are already rich because they can afford to not work and focus on campaigning. Campaigning is a job. I mean, it was my full-time job for a year and a half. I didn't get a paycheck. I got some stipend at the end to help me cover some things, but I was driving Uber and I experienced homelessness for 2 months during the campaign. And if I had a family, I would have dropped out probably, I think, like 5 months after I announced my race. We don't track the number of people who drop out of running for office because they couldn't afford it. And so we actually won and we were able to expand a little bit what candidates can do in terms of getting a stipend so they can pay their rent, pay for food and medicine while they run for office. I don't think people should go broke by simply raising their hand and saying, what about me? Like, what about me on the school board? What about me in Congress? What about me, state legislature or city council? And so I think we need to do a lot more in making elections more accessible for people, especially young people. And when we do that, we will see that not only are we represented here as like people and that we're walking the halls, but the issues will be centered in a different way.
Thank you for persevering and also speaking to how challenging it was at times. It should not be so difficult. And I wish you didn't have the obstacles that you faced and still that you persevered and won. It's just inspiring. I'm grateful to hear that you are feeling, you are feeling that you are part of Congress and not being kind of dismissed in any way. I know that some people, such as, based on their gender identity, are not being welcomed. And I'm glad that you are. Um, the president and Musk have worked since day one to undermine and downsize the U.S. Department of Education. At Nickel, we filed a lawsuit against some of those changes. I understand that recently you were part of a group of members of Congress who were, I believe, refused entry into the Department of Education. Would you share more about your experience so that those joining us today can appreciate, not the gravity of this moment and the consequences of this moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, this was months ago when we saw these dismantling of programs that people rely on, that people have earned. And, when this happened, it was actually, I was spending time thinking about what do we do to respond? Obviously, we have normal things we can do, letters, calling for investigations, but how do we work at meeting the moment even more? And actually, I was on social media and someone had left a comment saying, why don't you pull up and show the people if you can get in or out and show the people exactly what's going on? Because I think a mistake sometimes we make, especially folks who are hyper involved, and I always say it's the people who consume news as a hobby. I'm one of those people where if you're very interested in politics, you're one of those people. But the average American isn't, and we can't assume that everyone's paying attention. And so I read that comment and said, damn right, we need to pull up. And so actually the first one I organized, I got about 2 dozen members of Congress to go to the Department of Treasury. When they denied us entry, well, really, at first they didn't deny us. They just kept us waiting a long time, and then they denied us. We went around the other corner of the building and we rallied with 1,000 people with MoveOn.org, Indivisible, and Working Families Party. Then we went to the Department of Education, and this one was planned by Mark Takano. And we pulled up and they wouldn't let us in. And it wasn't that, and many people saw the video of that guy standing in front of the door. It wasn't the guy that was keeping us out. I would have just walked around him. There was also like 20 doors. It was the fact that the doors were locked, and behind those doors were armed DHS officers. But there's a reason we pulled up. I had a hunch that they wouldn't let us in. But that video showed the American people that their representatives were being blocked entry while Doge and Elon Musk were being let in. And that was an important message, not to just get across by talking about it or putting out a letter about it, but by physically showing people exactly what was going on. Because it really helps catch fire and show people just kind of how horrible it is, this billionaire takeover of our government, where they are trying to make all these cuts just to pay for tax cuts for billionaires and the biggest corporations and doing nothing to helping working people. And that's the whole reason we pulled up to the Department of Education. I think that video and other videos that we got from like actually showing up physically, which is not normal for a member of Congress, helped us get that message out to show. And I used to say, when I did a lot of direct actions, I used to tell people part of the reason we're doing this is because we're trying to show our community that this issue exists here. During Black Lives Matter, we wanted to show Orlando that it's George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd sparked this movement, but we also wanted to show people that it wasn't just happening in Minnesota, but it was happening at home. It was happening in Florida. And so when we protest, when we do things to get on the news and show people, we're kind of taking our community by the shoulders and shaking the community and saying, look, it happens here too. And that's part of the reason we went to the Department of Education, to show people that all these things you see across the world of authoritarian takeovers, of oligarchs, the richest people becoming even more powerful and running the government, can happen and has been happening here too. And that's why we did that.
Congressman Frost, in today's environment, one that is so politically charged, there is a lot at stake for young people. For policies, for example, around healthcare and education are being debated in Congress, or even wholesale changed by executive order. What would you say to young people who feel they are not being listened to or included in these debates?
Well, in many cases, you're not being listened to. And it's not even just about being listened to, but it's about legislators understanding and actually taking what you tell them and using it to craft legislation. And this is part of the reason I decided to run for office. A lot of legislators don't see young people as actually part of their constituency. And we've seen this for a long time. Uh, when you are a member of Congress, you represent everybody in your district, every human in your district, not every voter, every person, every young person, every person behind bars, every person who goes to work every day, every human, whether they're documented or not. You represent everybody who lives there. And it's important for people to recognize that. The problem is for too long, special interests and corporations that have the money to have lobbyists in these halls every day, to have meetings with people every day, to fly people up here every day, have had outside influence on our politics, especially all this corporate dark money that we're seeing in our elections and in our primaries. And so this is part of the reason more young people need to run for office. But I just want to validate people's concern that they're not being listened to. In many cases, you're not. But in many cases, you are too, depending on who the person is. And that's why mass public movements are so important, because it helps us show people that we feel unheard. I mean, there's that famous Martin Luther King quote that I'm paraphrasing, protest is the language of the unheard. And that's why protest is so important, especially in this moment, because not only are we all, the young people, being unheard in this moment by the administration, but members of Congress are being unheard. The people are being unheard, because there's only one thing on top of mind for Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and it's making the rich richer and privatizing education, privatizing Social Security, and privatizing everything so rich people can get rich off of our government. And to that, we say no. We say hands off. I was here in DC just a few days ago where we had 100,000 people at a protest here saying hands off, and millions across the entire, not just country, but world. And so what I always tell people is the true testament of an organizer is what you do when nobody is paying attention. The true testament of a movement is what you do when the world is watching, and the world is watching right now. And now is the time for people to really step up and figure out what you can do and what you can do to advocate to ensure that not only are you being heard, but you're showing people that if you don't hear us, we're going to vote you out.
The images and photographs of people, just people out there taking part in democracy and calling on our government to serve us and to serve the people and serve the future. They were just incredible. So young people, youth activism is one of the most powerful movements of our time, and it has been throughout modern history. What are some ways that young activists can continue to push for meaningful legislative change, even within this context?
Well, part of it's what I brought up, which is protest direct action in your communities. The second thing is making sure you still, even if it is someone that you believe is not listening to you, still show up, still make sure that people are there hearing your voice, and then make sure that the public knows, that you've taken those steps to speak with that legislator. I'm a big fan of these town halls people are hosting across the country in red districts. I actually hosted one in Michigan with Senator Chris Murphy. We're on the road right now going to red districts where a member of Congress is refusing to do a town hall because they don't want to be yelled at. Well, people don't want the things that we fought for taken away to be given to billionaires. And so we have to step in when other people aren't there. The other thing I tell people, and this is something Jamie Raskin has been saying, and I love it, it's if you want to know what to do in this moment, join a group locally that'll tell you not what to do this week, not what to do this month, but what to do every day. And there are organizations across the entire country locally that are plugging people into political advocacy and showing them exactly what they need to do.
Thank you. Um, you've spoken to this somewhat, but I'm going to invite you to respond in case there's anything further you'd like to share. So I think I'll pose two questions to you and invite you to respond as you see appropriate. So first is, from your perspective as a member of Congress, what are the most effective ways for people, constituents, to get attention from Congress? And then also, any thoughts on what people can do right now to hold Congress accountable to advance policy that serves the people?
Yeah, I mean, so first off, reaching out to the offices is really important. Every time you send a letter, a call, an email, a letter, or anything like that, there's a record kept of it, and it's important to send those. I'm not saying it's the end all be all. We got to do everything at the same time. This is part of the problem in this moment that I see online too. That if someone says, call your legislator, you'll have somebody demean that and say, "What does that do?" Do everything. Just stop nitpicking everything and do everything. This is part of the reason our opposition is more organized and well funded than we are, because they're going to do everything they can. We got to do everything we can do in this moment. Send the letters, make the calls. These things are really important, but also figure out ways that you can uplift the complacency of your elected official to the general public, because that can impact elections, and elections scare politicians. They want to get reelected. Hosting these town halls, doing protests in front of the offices, inviting the press, writing op-eds, writing letters to the editor, getting on the news, all of this is really important. And join a group that is doing this locally. Part of the problem we also have in our movement is everybody that makes their own thing. And a lot of times you do need to make your own thing if nothing exists locally. But we need to collaborate and be together on a lot of this work we're doing, because we need strength in numbers right now. Don't demean someone if they voted for Trump and now they're saying, "I regret my vote. What can I do?" Don't say, "I told you so." Don't say, you get what you got or anything like that. Say, "I'm sorry you were lied to. Welcome to the movement. Let's fight fascism. Let's fight authoritarianism together." Political movements are about addition, not subtraction. And if you find yourself subtracting, unless it's like someone who obviously is being openly racist or anything like that, but if you find yourself subtracting people because of a political decision they made, I would say you're not an organizer. You're not helping our movement. You're hurting our movement. In this moment, we need more people, mass movements here locally, but across the country as well. So reach out to your legislator. Figure out how on the outside, through roots of activism and organizing, you can uplift the complacency of the elected official. And then sometimes you run for office yourself. I always like to uplift an organization called Run for Something that helps really young progressives across the country figure out how they can run for local offices across the whole country. And again, I mean, I'd love more young people here in Congress. My hope, I'm still the youngest member of Congress. I'm in my second term. Next term, I really can't be the youngest member of Congress anymore because I am getting older. So we need younger people running for office and working class people. And also, we need older people too who are new to the institution. And I'll give you an example. I think about my mom. She was she just retired. Was a public school educator for 37 years, taught special education. Right. So my mom was an ESC teacher, special education for 37 years. My mom just retired. I would love someone like my mom to be in Congress. Why? Because she knows what it means to grow old now. Like, we need that here.
Yeah.
We need people here who know what it means to grow up now. And so, again, for me, it's less about we need younger people, but we also just need like people who like have life experiences that they can bring to the table. Because someone like my mom, her experiences working with the parents and with parents of students with special needs, oh my God, it could be transformational to have her voice here and to have people like her here. So run for office. That's another thing we need people to do as well.
Well, thank you for your response, and also thank you to your mother for her 37 years of dedication to students and families. That's remarkable.
I'm a big, I'm, I love my mom. I'm a big fan.
So we'll now open up for questions. And so everyone here listening, please feel free to send questions through the chat, and we'll address them, as many of them as possible with the time remaining. Okay, first question. So how to explain why do many people in Congress ignore youth issues when they have children and grandchildren themselves? Are the lobbyists that powerful?
Yeah, well, and it's not just lobbyists. I feel like oftentimes in politics we try to find like the one thing, and oftentimes it's not one thing, but it's many things. and lobby, the word lobbyist is such a bad word, but there's like good lobbyists on the Hill too, right? There's people. I mean, for instance, um, there are lobbyists for gun violence prevention, there are lobbyists for youth and children issues. But the problem is a lot of the corporate, not just lobbyists, but the corporate ecosystem on the Hill. It's financing of elections. It's giving candidates money. It's the lobbyists. It's all these different stuff. It is very powerful. It is extremely powerful. And we live in this moment now because of the disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision, which has made it so that way corporations and billionaires can spend unlimited amounts of money in our election. And it is very powerful. But Mark, I always ask myself this same question. And I'll give you an example that even hits harder than just thinking about your children, your grandchildren, and your kids, but is actually like your own experience. Steve Scalise, who's the currently Republican majority leader, he was shot and almost died during a practice for the congressional baseball game. Some of y'all might remember this. And I remember when that happened, I was like, wow, like that's horrible, number one.
Horrible.
But I wonder if this changes his mind on any gun issues, because he's just experienced gun violence in the most horrific way, and it didn't. And everyone is different. I always say there's two types of members. There are true believers and there are performers. And there are people who are true believers on certain things and performers on other things. The issue with gun violence here is that it's so stuck in the muck because of groups like the NRA and because of the outside influence of corporations and what they can do in politics. We need democracy reform in this country so that way legislators can make decisions based on nothing else except what they think is the right thing to do in the moment for the country. And if we do that, it won't solve all problems, because there are people who generally disagree. They have a certain outlook on things. But we must get big money out of politics. We must ensure that that's not the end all be all of our elections. And I think it's really going to help us.
Thank you. We have another question. Do you think the policy damage is permanent, or do you think that future Congress can undo the damage to younger generations?
Another Jamie Raskin quote, he always says, nothing in politics is inevitable and nothing in politics is impossible. And so the reason I say that is because nothing is permanent as long as there's a United States Congress. In fact, even our Constitution can be amended through a certain process. We always have an opportunity to do better than past generations, to learn and to move forward. That's the whole reason I ran for Congress. I know I work in an institution that has done a lot of harm and that perpetuates a lot of harm. And I'm part of that now. And that's something I have to contend with. But at the same time, I do believe that not just my presence here, but my beliefs here can help get to a better place. And I believe in bold transformational change. So just how quickly people like Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing big damage to our government and our society, we can not just defend things, but push for great things. It's part of what I've been telling a lot of my Democratic colleagues. We have to tell people that we're going to protect Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, but we can't stop there. We have to tell people what is our Social Security? What is our Medicaid, Medicare? What are the things we're proposing that will be even better for people? Because when you talk about just defending the status quo, it's not enough for folks who 60% of our country lives paycheck to paycheck. And so we're going to defend these programs, but we're also going to work to not just make them better, things like lifting the cap on Social Security, so that way we have more longevity there and it's more fair for people. But we're going to work on expanding Medicaid nationwide. We're going to work on making sure that we fight the privatizing Medicare and all these different things.
It's wonderful to hear you say that there's always a future where we have the opportunity to do better by each other. Okay, next question. I was recently working on a local city council race in a college town. The candidate said historically, college students in that town didn't vote, so they were not going to canvass their neighborhoods, despite it being a large part of their district. How do we counter that idea to get candidates to engage students and young people?
Yeah, well, I appreciate bringing that up because part of the reason maybe the young people are not voting there is because candidates don't reach out to them. So I think part of it is show people that the numbers. I mean, I went up to campaign for Raphael Warnock in Georgia. I did a college tour, packed rooms everywhere. I mean, the energy with young people was insane. And the youth vote is why Raphael Warnock is a US Senator right now. And what you have to tell people is the youth vote might not be the largest slice of the pie, but in an election where you can generally know who's going to vote for who generally based on historical patterns, we might not be the biggest slice of the pie, but we can be the slice of the pie that decides the race. That is why you have to speak with young people in your district. That is why you have to canvass colleges in your district. And it's not going to change until candidates actually go out there and speak with young people. But it's not just about speaking with young people, because I have to be honest too. We also have institutional barriers to voting for young Americans that make it very difficult, even down to the age at which you start voting, which I have my kind of controversial opinion that I don't think is that controversial. I actually think we should lower the voting age a little bit. And I think it's actually going to help us have more people voting because we instill this habit in folks at a less kind of crazy time in their life. I mean, 18, you're graduating high school, you're figuring out what you want to do. You have all this pressure. And now we've said, by the way, you can vote now. And I think we need to instill this in young people a little earlier, maybe when they're 16. And I think it'll be better. Perhaps we start with local elections. I don't know. I'm open to a lot of different things. But not just that, but it is hard for young people, especially depending on where they move. I'll give you an example. UCF, one of the biggest universities in the country, is in my district. I go to so many young people there, and the state is passing law after law to make it damn near impossible for these young people to participate in our democracy. So many of them pull up to vote. They hadn't yet registered to vote yet because the state is cracking down on third-party voter registration. And they ask, well, I'm here to vote. Can I vote? Can I register day of? And they can't. Why can't our government allow people to register day of? Not just that, why are we not automatically registering people to vote when they can vote? We have all their information. Registering to vote is one of the largest voter suppression tactics in this country. No one should have to register to vote when our government has all the information. They should just be registered when they become eligible. Mm-hmm. And so for me, there's also a lot of institutional barriers. But here's the problem. If the candidates don't interact with young people, we make it even worse.
Making it easier to vote and expanding access to voting, absolutely. There are amazing young organizers who have secured the right to vote in certain local elections, including their school board in New Jersey. It's really, really exciting opportunities for our future. So, Congressman, thank you so much for your time today. Your courage, your passion, your insights all are truly inspiring. I feel inspired, and I hope others do as well. We need more like you on both sides of the aisle who are really putting people first. We're so grateful for everything you're doing. Please, everyone in our audience, look at Congressman Frost's website and to stay informed and support his work. Also, please check out our website at youthlaw.org for more information and learn how you can support our mission for children, youth, and families. Thank you, everyone, for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you,
so much.